This is a response video for Dylan, Noble Records 750 subscribers contest, of which he's blown those numbers out of the water. He's like at 1,300 right now. So, Dylan, congrats, man. I'm super happy for you. It's much deserved. You're a great guy, and you're selling records. I know, which some people are like, oh, he's a dealer. I think it's fine. And it's for a great cause. It's for your family. It's for your son. I think that's amazing. And it's been really fun getting to know you over the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years on Instagram, and then seeing you hop on the YouTube bus here with the VC is really cool, and I'm super happy about all the success you've gotten. But the Psych Professor and I both really loved the thread idea and your contest idea of the vinyl biography, and then the prize package being a curated group of records specifically for the winners, I think is amazing too. It's a really cool idea and very personal idea. And you seem like just such a great guy that wants to give back to the people that are subscribing and watching, and you're doing it in a way that's not generic. It's, you know, you're making it personal and specific to each person. I think it's awesome. So here's my entry into your contest. Question number 1, your first memory with vinyl. This is very different than my first memory with music. That happened at a much younger age and with cassette tapes in my parents' van. But vinyl... my first memory is with my grandparents, my dad's mom and dad, who lived out in the country, and they were kind of, my dad even describes them as rednecks, and but in the best possible way. They were super down-to-earth people, and really loved their country records and bluegrass records. Everything from, this is my grandpa's copy, actually, it's in my collection now. When he passed away, my brother and my cousin and I kind of took turns swapping records and things like that. So I'm really happy to have this. This is in contention for records that have the most significance for you, but for now they'll be my vinyl memories. Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, of course, was always playing Your Cheating Heart. And I just picture Grandma cooking at the stove and Hank Williams playing in the background. And then Bo showed this in his video too, and I saw it and was like, oh man, it's going to be in mine, and I'm going to leave it in anyway because we played the heck out of this record at my grandparents', and then my dad, I think, had a cassette tape of it. It's the spectacular Johnny Horton's greatest hits with the Battle of New Orleans and everything in between. I mean, it's played all the time in our house and my grandparents' house, and I don't know, anytime I listen to country records, which is not a lot, it's not my typical go-to, but every once in a while I feel in the mood for some Johnny Cash or Hank Williams or something, I put it on and I'm right back in my grandparents' living room, like to the point where I can feel the carpet and see their big box TV and the old wood cabinet, and just, yeah, I miss them a lot, and they passed away a few years ago, but having my grandpa's records is really important to me and really special, and I'm glad to have those memories as well. Alright, next up, first record you fell in love with. My musical journey was a long one. I liked music. Music was always around. Like I said, my grandparents played it all the time. My dad, we had a full like speaker system in our house, like in-ceiling speakers on our main floor and upstairs. And so every morning we're getting ready. My dad had the radio on and it was playing through the whole house from the time I was like 9 years old until I left home. They still have the speaker system in their house, which is pretty cool. But I wasn't really like a music guy. I didn't seek out great music. I just kind of listened to the radio, and then in high school I was big into pop punk. I'm embarrassed about it too, even though I still listen to it quite a bit. But it wasn't until I was like a senior in high school where I heard an album that was different than anything I'd listened to. It wasn't classic rock, it wasn't pop punk, and it was sort of critically revered at the time, even though this group kind of gets poo-pooed a little bit now. But that record for me was Coldplay's Parachutes. I mean, it really opened up a whole world of music to me, and sort of, I don't know if you can call this a full album experience, but I love every song on this album. Each song has different meaning and different importance to me personally. And I remember buying this CD and A Rush of Blood to the Head. I bought it in 2003 when Rush of Blood came out. I heard a lot of stuff about it, and actually I think it was an MTV Video Music Awards thing where Justin Timberlake specifically mentioned both records in his thank you speech as inspirations for him. And I wasn't a Justin Timberlake fan, but it was enough to like, what? I need to listen to these, I guess. And I bought them at Best Buy in Augusta, Georgia when I was visiting my grandparents. And put this on, had my little portable CD player laid down in the bed at my grandparents' house, and was like, oh, I love this. This is great. And they're still two of my favorite records of all time. This edging it out a little bit because it was the first one I heard, and I fell in love with it. From Don't Panic to Shiver to Parachutes. And ironically, the big hit Yellow is my least favorite track on the album, and when I listen to the CD, I usually skip it. But, man, I love this record so much, and it has so much meaning to me as well. Which leads into the next question: what record has the most impact or significance for you? And that was a really, really tough question for me to answer, because there are a lot of records that I have memories tied to, and I was trying to think of something that, maybe my wife and I listen to a lot, but she's not really a music person. We have shared musical interests that overlap a little bit, but they don't have like a huge significance or anything. But we met in college, and one of the artists that I had discovered late my senior year of high school and early college was Ryan Adams, and I listened to this specific record, CD at the time, and now vinyl, and I think this was actually the first record that my wife bought for me, was Ryan Adams' Demolition. And I know Ryan Adams himself is like, I don't like this album. It's called Demolition because these were not ever tracks intended for a record. They were demos, and I didn't think they fit on anything. The record label said I had a requirement to make another album, and they put this demo collection out. But again, it was my first Ryan Adams album that I ever listened to in full, and I love it. There are so many songs on here: Nuclear, Desire, Cry on Demand's Dear Chicago is still one of my favorite songs of all time. We would listen to this all the time when we were dating, my wife and I think she kind of tolerated it. She didn't love it, but I still love it, and it got me through some tough times in college as well, so there's a lot of personal significance tied to this as well. And yeah, and now I'm a Ryan Adams junkie. Easy Tiger came out, I think, late in our freshman year, and I remember going to a record listening party, and I still have my friend Anna's CD copy of it. I told her like 8 years ago I was going to mail it back to her, and I still have it on my shelf. So Anna, I'm sorry about that. I'll get it back to you someday. We'll hang out. All right, album that I spent the most money on is a three-way tie, and I'll say what I paid for it. I'm not. It's not a huge, crazy amount, but for me, it's a lot of money to spend on records. Even though I'm laughing at it because it's not that much. It's $60. The first record I ever paid that much for was an original copy of the Zombies' Odyssey and Oracle. This was. It still is in conversation for my favorite album ever, and at the time it was sort of at the top of my want list, and a copy popped up on Discogs in pretty good shape, and at $60, while this was kind of trending upwards and still is, didn't hesitate at all, and I'm very happy to have that copy. The second record I paid $60 for was this copy of The Remains at a St. Louis record show. The cover's decent. I mean, it's not super clean. There's some writing on it and some, age coloration or whatever you want to call it. That's not a word, but you know what I'm saying. But the record looked pretty banged up, like good plus. But the guy was like, hey, it plays much better than that. And if you go to The Remains on Discog and look at copies for sale, you'll see a copy right now listed at good plus with a VG cover where the guy's like, I swear to you this plays VG. And this plays VG or better. So $60 on this was kind of a steal of a deal, and I didn't want to leave it behind. So It was a tougher buy than the Odyssey and Oracle one was, but ultimately I'm really happy to have this. And the one that I've also paid $60 for that really was like, I was sweating and didn't know if I wanted to pay that much for it, and I think I went back and forth over a couple record shows before I actually pwned it up and helped support our friend Greg a little bit, was this copy of the Baroques, which is a promo copy, also in mono, and it's a great record as well. I mean, garage pop site goodness. Iowa, A Girl's Name, Mary Jane, Rose-Colored Glasses, those are all on the first side, and they're all phenomenal tracks. So, yeah, again, I really hemmed and hawed over this one and didn't want to do it, but I did, and then I did it, and I'm happy I did, and I'm glad to have this in the collection. So those are my three that I paid the most for, and that segues us into the last question, your Holy Grail. So now that you know $60 for me was like, I don't know if I should pay $60. Well, how am I ever going to afford a Holy Grail? I'm probably not going to, and especially this one, it's top of my Holy Grail list, which sounds stupid because there should only be one Holy Grail, otherwise it's not a Holy Grail.
It's the Holy.
But it's the Holy of Holies. So the one for me is Gandalf, self-titled. I've wanted a copy forever and had the opportunity a few years ago to get one on eBay for $100, and I was like, ho, not a chance. Now if I had a time machine, I would go back and buy it in a heartbeat. The other holy grail for me that's not vinyl related, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway in case somebody has these and would be willing to sell them. I told my wife the other day, it was like Parks and Rec when Donna was like, it's what my accountant calls a reckless amount of money I'm willing to pay for this. Would be Ray LaMontagne's first 2 self-release CDs before he released Trouble. One's called Acre of Land, and the other one I think is just called Introducing Ray Charles LaMontagne. Again, independently self-released, so there's not very many copies out there. I've never seen one for sale online. I don't know anybody that has any copies of them at all. But if you're out there, I would buy those for silly money. So those are my holy grails, and that's my entry into your contest, Dylan. Again, congrats, man. I'm super happy for you. I'm pumped to get the hoodie. I bought a hoodie from him the other day. Check him out on Instagram. I think he's got a Facebook page as well. Go over to Dylan's channel and subscribe. Help him pump those numbers up. Watch his videos. He's a great storyteller. He finds tons of great records. Your jaw will be on the floor at some of the stuff he finds. And couldn't go to a better person. So, Dylan, congrats, man. And we'll see you next time. See ya.